This is one of their mobile kitchens that they actually...
Is that even some, what I call habitual...
Beautiful Stop and Shop in the Wilton. Penalty, but it was actually a tax, and that it...
Absolutely. What's the name of the show?
Good evening and welcome once again to the Marty Heiser Show. I know what you're thinking. He's going with the pastels. That's right, because spring is in the air. Forget spring. We've jumped right to August. And we got thunderstorms, we got plus 90-degree weathers, and I love it. The socks are off. They're not going to go back on until October. The flip-flops are out. I'm loving it. We're going with the light-colored jackets. That's what we're doing. I am declaring summer here. It's official. Now watch, it's going to be like a foot of snow come next week or something like that. But thank goodness that the weather is warming up. We've got an incredible show lined up for you. You're going to meet a candidate named Manny Santos running for the 5th Congressional District here in Connecticut, the mayor of Meriden. This guy is a immigrant from Portugal. You know, I love the Republicans. They're always getting hammered as being anti-immigrant and all a bunch of nonsense. Nonsense at all. They're the most diverse political organization that you can imagine. He served his country in the Marines. He's a mayor of Meriden, and you're going to be able to meet him. And by the way, if you have any questions for him, the phone number's on your screen, 203-438-2003. And you'll be able to ask him questions right here live in living color, and he will respond to him because he wants to represent you in Washington. The other person we have on, who you're going to meet in just 1 minute, is Bob Moran. Bob Moran, think of genius-level technology philosopher. That's who I think we have, that you could describe Bob Moran as, and he's right here and he's going to talk. But you know, I'm running around trying to run a painting business. I'm minding my own business, and I come up, I happen to have been in Greenwich. And what do I see on the cover of the Greenwich Times but high school kids draped in an American flag? He looks like he's originally from a Hispanic country. Pro-Second Amendment group counters earlier protests. You can't make this stuff up. Here he is. This is a candidate. It says sophomore Adrian Martinez dons an American flag and displays a sign during a pro-gun walkout at Greenwich High School on Wednesday when about a dozen students walked out. Here he is. He made the cover of Greenwich Times, a pro-Second Amendment high school walkout. I mean, this is unbelievable. It's really unbelievable what's going on right now in the culture. Because you have Conway, whatever his name is, the African-American guy, loving Trump. You have support for Donald Trump in the Hispanic and black communities doubling. More than double voted for them that voted for John McCain or Mitt Romney. You're seeing young people, Exhibit A, who aren't willing to just gobble up the political line of the left, the Democratic left. You know, turn away your guns, let the government control you. I jotted down a couple notes. Republicans, they want more money in your pocket. They want you to pay less taxes. They want to have less government. What you see happening to Trump right now, where his office is being raided, and his attorneys' phones are being tapped. I mean, what do we live in? What is this, 1984? What is this, the gulags? What is this, some sort of Russian communist all-encompassing government? That's what you have on the Democratic side. I know maybe our guests might disagree with me, but that's what I think. They're running on Nancy Pelosi. We're going to repeal those tax cuts. Those crumbs are coming right back to Washington. We want to have more government control. We want to have, and the latest example of this on a cultural level, did you see this gorgeous young lady who was wearing this really nice Chinese dress? Oh my gosh, you're culturally taking over China. How dare you wear this really pretty, gorgeous Chinese dress to your high school prom? I mean, they're a bunch of killjoys. Talk about a joyless, a hall monitor kind of worldview. That's what you get from the liberal Democratic Party. Socially, politically, you don't want to have your own money, give it to the government. We'll spread it around fairly. It'll be okay. Then that's what you have. a party of fun and joy. That's what you're seeing a little bit on the Republican side. And whether you like Donald Trump or not, you can't tell me that rally in Washington, whatever it was, Michigan, didn't kick butt on that the Correspondence Center in Washington. That lady who was there, and I don't know how you stand on the whole pro-life issue. I'm pretty pro-life. But here's a line from the comedian. See if you think this is funny. She did a little riff on abortion. Here it goes. On abortion, don't knock it till you try it. And when you do try it, really knock it, because you got to get that baby out of there. And hey, sure, you can groan all you want. I know a lot about you anti-abortion, unless you're anti-abortion unless it's one of your secret mistresses. I don't know if you're pro-life. I happen to be pro-life. My wife and I just had the birth. We're celebrating the 1-year anniversary, the 1-year birthday of our gorgeous little granddaughter. I don't know why you would want to kill a baby in the womb. But when the Democrats get together at the Correspondence Center in Washington, they joke about abortion. Don't knock it till you try it. But when you knock it, make sure you knock it hard, because you got to get that baby out of there. That's the liberal left in this country right now. Not pro-life. It's a culture of death. So when you see that the millennials aren't following their masters in the Democratic Party, but have a different approach to whether it's the Second Amendment, whether it's the pro-life issue, whether it's the economy, and all of a sudden they're not walking lockstep with Nancy Pelosi and that really hipster Chuck Schumer, but they're looking over at the Republican side. Economy's booming, exports are up, minority unemployment at record level lows, 14 states have record level low unemployment. They've never seen this level of unemployment before. I want to tell you, when I was a youngster coming out in the 1980s, starting my own business, there was this guy named Ronald Reagan, and it was good times. Taxes were low, the economy was booming, regulations were cut. It's a good time. It's fun to be a conservative Republican. It's fun to go against the grain. It's fun, especially here in the Northeast, to be the rebel, to be the rock and roller, to be the counterculture, because that's what being a conservative is now. And you just maybe happen to come on this dopey little cable TV show, but you're here now, and I'm here to tell you we're flipping the script. And one other guest I had tonight is a dog, because that's how we roll here in the Conservative Party. It's a dog, and the dog's name is Rafi. Here you go, Rafi. Rafi is a therapy dog. It was trained originally by the Roar community in Ridgefield, which stands for, I forget what it stands for, but here she is. So if you see the dog periodically tonight, it's just here to calm me down personally and add to the conversation. But that's just my rant. Let me see if I left anything out. Self-reliant on the Republican side, dependent on government on the Democrat side. Culture of joy, fun, keep your money on the Republican side. Culture of death, joyless, and give the government all your money. We'll take care of you. You decide. But evidently, the youth are choosing freedom. So good on you. Okay, I want to welcome Bob Moran. Thank you so much for joining us. And Dave Straight, always here, always really ready to share. And
are you going to pick on my hair, my watch, my attire today? What's it going to be, Marty?
I don't know.
You never let me off the show without ripping me apart.
No,
so
I think the watch, I think the hair is good. I think you come together good.
Pull together?
It's summer, yeah. You pull it together good. You clean up pretty good.
You set the bar really high.
Well,
see, I'm like Mr. GQ. I walk out here all the time.
I know.
What do I have to match up to?
I know. I'm trying to,
shout out to Simon this morning.
Where is Simon? Do we have some paperwork from Simon there?
Yeah, pass it on to your wife.
Okay,
it was
great.
a truckload this time.
Excellent. Shout out to Simon. We love you, Simon, and call in. And if you do want to join the conversation, 203-438-2003. We'll put you right on the air. Bob Moran.
I think I have a friend here.
You do. You do.
He just thinks you have the food.
It's a therapy dog, and the therapy dog is Rafi. And if you go to the Roar, R-O-A-R, Roar website in Ridgefield, Connecticut, you can learn more about therapy dogs and what they do. But this one is a doll, and she will be around. Technology.
Yes.
Are we headed for the abyss where government's going to control everything and it's a bad thing and we're not interacting on a human level? Or is this really expanding the possibilities for human education, expanding our world of knowledge? What's a good thing, what's a bad thing? And thanks for joining us.
Yeah, when you talk about technology, there is no morality. There is no morality. You know, it's like a gun, it's like a hammer, it's like anything else. There is no morality. Depends on the person using it. So when you start looking at it from that standpoint, you start to say, what are the costs? What are the pluses and what are the minuses?
So with like using your example there, that it's really there is no morality. It's dependent upon the person using it. Does that apply to guns too?
Yes.
So it's really just dependent upon the person using it. Okay.
Of course. And when you look at it from that standpoint, your whole understanding of how tech evolves is really interesting. Science drives technology. Technology is the tool that takes advantage of scientific theories. And our whole worldview has changed because of guys like Einstein, Newton, Young, all these people that came in and developed a worldview that allowed us to develop the computer. Now when you think about a device like this is a supercomputer. This is 10 times faster than the Cray computer of 1990.
Wow.
And you're dealing
was
with
just
technology,
yesterday.
so you're dealing with technology here that's real yet not real. Quantum theory is a theory that talks and enables how systems operate. And when you look at that and you're doing your research, it's Alice in Wonderland type stuff. It's absolutely amazing that this works. Same with the internet. Internet's probably the most complex construct ever made. And it's voluntary. And it was developed by guys like Bennett Cerf and Berners-Terners-Lee for open source technology.
It wasn't
was
Al
a
Gore,
gift.
didn't Al Gore?
There was no organization. The government and ARPA started it in order to see if the US could survive a nuclear war. Okay? Your computer graphics came from the understanding of how does a bomb propagate its radiation in New York. It was one of the leading driving vectors for computer graphics.
There's
So
a
when you-
nuclear explosion
Yes,
in Manhattan.
In Manhattan.
How do you
How do the
what
rays
happens?
propagate in radiation? How do you picture that? And the technology is called ray tracing. And ray tracing was used in the movies of Tron. It's used in virtually every special effects movie that you see today. And yet it was based on a wartime scenario that's like right out of Dr. Strangelove. So science is an accidental type of thing. And so many accidents have created amazing advances in technology. It's like penicillin. How was penicillin discovered? Well, it was discovered because Fleming he was kind of slovenly in his lab, and he looked at one Petri dish, and he had spilled an antibiotic on it. And he noticed, like, that's kind of strange. And he developed penicillin by seeing this accident and coming up with this amazing situation to cure infection. So your accidental empires, your accidental technologies have come forth from guys that have been screwing around and looking at reality differently. Very interesting, without question. So, what are the pluses and minuses? Well, the pluses and minuses are very interesting in terms of social media. Fake news. I tell young people, you want to look at fake news? Analyze the source. Where did it come from? And it doesn't matter if it's liberal or conservative or in between. You analyze the source from where it's coming from. And then you make your decision in terms of, is this information correct or not? I tell people, don't go to a place that you're always speaking to the choir. The guy that I've come to respect greatly through my exploration is Pat Buchanan.
I thought you were going to say Donald Trump.
No,
Oh.
Pat Buchanan, I have a great deal of respect for. And guys like Rand Paul has philosophies that are in concert with what I feel. And it's looking at sites that are not along my political view, but I'm curious to see how these people react and how they look at world events. And by
And by the way, your site is Beyond Real Time. That's
Yes.
REAL, beyondrealtime.com. If you go to that, you have some pretty comprehensive discussions.
You will see, I think, a pretty objective view on everything from sex, drugs, and rock and roll to scientific technology, research, fake news, AI. It's read all over the world. And the links point to some very, very interesting connects, and it becomes almost like a rabbit hole. And I can honestly say, from a political spectrum, I'm an independent. I'm neither liberal or conservative. I look at each and every fact and say, what does this say to me? How does this resonate? Does this make sense? Does this compute? Almost like the way a computer does a yes-no in order to come up with the color blue. So by doing that, it's like I work with everybody. I work with guys like this guy. He's very conservative. He doesn't hate me.
No.
Because
Conservative.
because he says, well, you make sense. I disagree with just about everything you had to say, but you make sense. The same way with you. And the technology space, it's good or bad depending on who uses it. And one of the things that bothers me in tech, having a GPS in a car.
It's a good thing or a bad
Bad thing.
Bad.
Why? You're driving and you're looking over.
Yeah.
And you're looking over. Texting. I see people texting while I'm driving. I saw one guy passing me today in Wilton, and he's doing one of these. He's driving.
Yeah.
Deaths have gone up 15% because of this. So why don't the cell phone companies turn this stuff off when it's in motion? They have a GPS in this. So they have a motion sensor. So the minute you're going past 20 miles an hour, you know you're in a car. Why don't you turn this off? Why don't you turn off a GPS in your car? Do audio. Don't
It's like
do
having
visual.
a breathalyzer before you can turn the ignition on in the car.
Exactly. So that's a misuse of technology in terms of we're going to make money putting all these gizmos in a car, but we're not going to look at the ergonomics and the cost factor in terms of how this tech should be.
They did say the same thing way back when they were talking about having radios in car.
Yeah.
They said, "Oh, we can't have a radio because you'll be
Right.
changing
You're
the
right.
dial," and,
You're
and,
right.
you know. But we seem to have adjusted to that.
Yeah, but see, that's audio. You're not, when you're driving, you're focused on driving.
Yeah.
So the minute that you turn your head and you're looking over here, you're not looking at the road.
Okay, but let me just ask you philosophically
Sure.
with this technology, because the same technology that allows us to network and have these things that get better is the same technology that allows ISIS to promote homegrown terrorism all around the world.
Absolutely. Yeah.
If you could put the genie back in the bottle, would you? Or is it somehow, can we control this? But in trying to control it, like we had Zuckerberg with Facebook, and he went up and he
Right.
testified in front of Congress.
That was pretty painful.
Yeah, but they're saying, well, we need to censor this. So, but one person's hate speech is another person quoting from the Bible.
Yes.
So who's deciding? And when these technologies have so much power,
I don't want the government involved in the internet.
Thank you. I agree with
All
that.
right? I don't want government in the internet because
you have a
censoring is a selective process, and it becomes very dangerous.
Yeah.
It's a very dangerous thing.
Yeah.
So when you look at it, it's Wild West. You look at the internet, yeah, is there bad stuff on there with ISIS? Absolutely. But then, hey, I want to get a recording of Glenn Gould, and I want to listen to the Goldberg variations.
Yeah.
So here's a good thing.
Yeah.
So you have to look at it from that standpoint. There's no perfect solution to this.
But you're erring on the side of freedom.
Oh, absolutely.
I couldn't agree more.
Absolutely.
Hold on, there's a call. Caller, do you have a question for Bob Moran, technology guru, all-around intelligence savant? I mean, charter member of Mensa. This guy's brilliant. What is your question?
Marty, first of all, another great show. Dave, Bob, you. There's no better way to spend a Thursday night than watching you guys. Bob, a couple of things. You're right on the Alexander Fleming. He was studying Staphylococcus and found somebody's moldy bread that inhibited the growth of the staph in those petri dishes. So you're absolutely right.
Fleming, that was penicillin he found?
Yeah.
On moldy bread.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
From a
amazing.
moldy bread.
Just
Yeah.
amazing.
But hey, Bob, here's my other piece, right? There's a book called Thick Face Black Heart. It's called, very similar to technology that you're talking about. It's like a knife. It could be used to stab somebody, right? It could be used to cut your knife and used as a good tool. Here's my question as it relates to Facebook, right? As you look at that as a type of technology and what Zuckerberg did and Cambridge Analytica, they took the data and sold it, right? At the same time, customers are opting into Facebook and they're opting into Instagram, which is owned by Facebook. Bob, should the government even be involved in questioning Zuckerberg?
Good question.
I want to have your point of view.
Great question. Thanks for that. What about that?
Do you notice that your viewing audience calls in, and they must have PhDs? I mean, these people that call in are really well informed, they're super smart.
birds of a feather, you know what I'm saying? No, I'm kidding. What about that? I mean, with the Facebook thing, what he's saying is, as an independent, civilian citizen in the United States, you went and told people that you like Adidas shoes, and then all of a sudden, if they take that information and sell it to Adidas, saying, this guy likes to buy your high tops, and they send ads to you, and they can make money on that, where's the harm? What do you think?
Well, with Google has 100 times more data on us than Facebook.
Okay.
Facebook is like peanuts compared to Google.
But is this good or something that we should be feared?
It's reality. Look what's going to happen with retail. 10 years from now, 50% of the shopping malls are gone. They're gone.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Let's look at colleges. That's another thing. My alma mater, $70,000 a year. What's the guarantee of a kid getting a job? When the technologies in the job space is obsolete 4 years after the kid has graduated. We are talking an acceleration in terms of how stuff is being built and manufactured that is changing so fast that your education should be a lifelong learning process. What college really should teach you is how to think, how to analyze. Do you need to go and pay $70,000 to learn that? That's a really open-ended question here. And it's something that's very interesting. I remember when my son is a really talented programmer at Bloomberg. He's self-taught. He's autodidact. He was an English major in a Canadian college. Okay? Autodidact. No math genius, no anything. He taught himself. He had this thirst and desire to learn. And the education system should foster that desire to be curious. How does the world work? I'd like to find out how this works. Sacrifice. You want to become good at something. Well, you sacrifice. You have to, if you want to be a pianist, you're going to practice. You're not going to go out and play softball with your buddies. You're going to practice for 2 hours a day. We're not taught that anymore. Kids are not taught that anymore. They take this thing and they text. And when you think about this, and you think about 1984 and Orwell, texting is newspeak because your vocabulary is truncated because the interface is so bad. So what happens is the quality of writing goes down. And I've seen this in news publications, I've seen it with news broadcasters, and most importantly, I've seen it in advertising. So the idea of being literary competent, to be able to see stuff and analyze, that's the cost of this technology, because it's so easy. Joe Blow can create something and pump it out there based on no information at all, but it's phrased right, it goes viral. It goes viral, you say, oh my God, it's like such and such, such and such, such and such. And so here's the cost. Do you have the education space to be able to understand this device, to be able to say, okay, what sounds legitimate? Who gave me the information? Is this a trustworthy source in terms of doing this? And I see so much bloviation either, and it doesn't matter against Trump or a political figure, I've seen so much stuff, there's so much distortion because you don't understand the source, you don't understand the accuracy of the information.
What are your thoughts?
Well, that's a hard one to follow up on.
It's hard.
Here are a couple data points. These are facts that you can weigh in on. But between Google and Facebook, they accounted for 60% of all online ad spending. That's a bunch, 60%, just those two companies. The other thing is the real, and we talked about this the other day, the real irony is Zuckerberg getting up before a congressional panel and being grilled on privacy. The real irony is that the panel that was questioning him received $650,000 in campaign contributions from who? Zuckerberg. Of course. And the real irony there is they make it look like the government is defending our privacy when the government is actually the most invasive surveillance entity on planet Earth, and they're relying on Facebook and Google to feed all that information on us to the government. To the caller's point, he's exactly right. When you accept an app and you sign over all of your contacts, all of your phone numbers, all of your text messaging, everything to an app, that was by your own free will. Nobody should be regulating Google. Nobody should be regulating Facebook. They're free companies, independent companies. So let me pose this to Bob. Driverless cars seems to be the big new wave in technology. Not starting out so good. Ask the woman walking her, well, you can't ask her anymore, she's dead. But if you could, you'd ask the woman that was walking her bike across in front of the car and got whacked. How'd that go? I mean, what's going on?
No, more importantly, you have to talk about where is the state of the technology regarding driverless cars. That's what you really ask.
Yeah.
And it's prototype. It's beta. And the thing is when
Maybe they should try it out on
when
dummies,
you
though.
release this stuff in terms of beta, it's a very fine line in terms of how you do this. And do I think driverless cars are going to become real? Absolutely, no question. I was totally
driverless
against it.
semis, the 18-wheelers are the ones that really.
You're going to see all of this because the cost variability.
But how are you going to program? How is the computer going to make the judgment as to who lives and who dies? For example,
that's not really
Bob,
pertinent discussion.
But it is.
It's not
The
right.
car's going down the road. An accident is imminent. The computer's going to decide, do I ram into the side of the school bus with 30 kids that are 5 years old, or do I send this guy off a cliff? That's pretty relevant. The computer's going to decide. Do you want that to happen? I sure
Here's
don't.
a question. What would you decide?
Well, that's not the question.
No, yes, it is.
The question is,
no, it is.
do you want to allow the computer to decide?
No.
Do you want to allow the computer to decide?
It's funny you mentioned this because our next guest, and will you stay? I have an
I'll
idea.
stay.
We'd like you guys to stay. We're going to throw him right into the mosh pit here, the basket of deplorables, if you will. But the guy, when you say, what would you decide, what would you decide? Manny Santos, he's a mayor in Meriden, Connecticut, and he's running for the 5th Congressional District. He's going to be joining us right now, and I'd like you guys to put some of these questions to him because he has some ideas. Because in the end, when he gets into Congress, and I think he will, because Estes isn't running again, and he's a great guy. You're about to meet him. When he gets into Congress, he's going to have to answer some of these questions. So we're going to bring him in. Just really quick, let me tell you a little bit about Manny Santos. He's going to be joining us right now. He's not a career politician. Look at this guy. Look at him. Look at him. I don't know if we get a close-up of that shot. There he is. He was in the United States Marines, where he served his country. He's originally from Portugal. You know, I love the Republican Party because it is the most diverse party you can imagine. And we have more African American, more women in the Senate. We have minorities from all across the spectrum. And he's originally from Portugal, where his family grew up, and they came over here. He has a very interesting background from them. He's the first Republican to be elected mayor in Meriden, Connecticut since the original Iroquois Indians were planting in Meriden. So for over 30 years, he's the first Republican was there and opened up the city boards and commissions to average citizen, regardless of their association and political party, and he's done a great job there. And he, although he seems like a very reasonable person, is deciding that he wants to run for the U.S. Congress from the 5th Congressional District, and I believe the existing congressman who's there, this young lady named Estes, is hasta la vista, some sort of a Me Too thing with her chief of staff or something like that. But I just want to welcome Manny. Thank you so much for coming in.
It's great being here, Marty.
I really appreciate it. I hope you can handle this. We have this guy's like these Mensa we're talking about with technology, so they're going to be firing some questions at you as well, as well as Dave Strait, who just wears a golf shirt and has a lot of good ideas. But why are you deciding to run? And thanks again for coming in.
Oh, sure. Thank you for making time.
Sure.
Excellent. Well, when we take a look at the direction that our country is going, the current administration, President Trump and his policies, I support. And I think the majority of Americans support his policies as well. We do have a Republican-controlled Congress, although sometimes I'm not so sure they actually take advantage of that. So I want representation here from Connecticut going to Washington, D.C. that's Republican, that can support this administration and a lot of the policies with lower taxes, lower regulation, increased border control, and perhaps even build that wall that he's been talking about for such a long time. These are good policies that I think would strengthen our country if he has the support.
Yeah, I mean, it's you talk about like people just do things the way they always did. I love that story you told about the ham. You know, and how they cut. Could just share that story, because I think you talk about an entrenched political class that just keeps doing the same thing over and over again, never knowing that there's no real reason why we do it that way, but we can flip the switch. Well, how did that go? If you think it applies.
Well, So you want me to recite the?
I'll say it.
the
Okay.
ham- okay. No, I know it.
It's a great story.
Yeah. So my grandmother cuts a ham, and has always done this at the ends and places in the pan and puts it in the oven. Mother always asks, this is what we do all the time. All right, fine. So my wife does the same thing. So she cuts it up and puts it in a pan. Cuts the two ends, puts it in a pan, puts it in the oven. And one time, someone asks, Grandma,
Yeah.
why do you always cut why do you cut the ham? Well, I used to do it because the pan was too small.
And so that's the only way she could do it, is cut the ham.
Yeah.
But that's how it does
I may
seem
not
like
have
with
said
politics.
it exactly.
You ruined your own story. I could have told it a lot better. It was
Next time, I'm going to let you say it.
No, but the idea is we just keep repeating the same thing over and over again, and that's what I see in Connecticut. The Democrats run this state, and we're one of the few states that actually is losing population. The rest of the country is going on this wild growth spurt, and here we are talking about raising taxes again, and how can we keep companies? How can you lose General Electric? How can you let that happen? How can you lose Aetna? They were in this state for 124 years, and I don't want to hear about how Boston is somehow smarter than us. What, we were really smart for 124 years and we all got stupid, so they got to go to Boston where they can get smart people to run their country or their company? We need to flip the script here in Connecticut, and I want you to be elected to the 5th Congressional District so you can begin the process of turning this state around, because I love this state, I raised my family in this state, and I want to stay.
Sure. I'm raising my family here in this state as well. What I tell individuals is this: look, if come the general election, you have a choice, predominantly between a Democrat and a Republican. And it's just a matter of, do you believe the Democrat policies or do you believe the Republican policies? Now, if you believe in the Democrat policies, Connecticut is a fine example of Democrat policies fully implemented. This is what we get: high taxes, high regulation, companies moving out, unemployment high. People are leaving, as you said. People are leaving this state at an alarming rate, and we want individuals to stay here. We want to be able to retire here. We want to be able to convince our children to stay here, go to school here, perhaps even go to school in another state. It doesn't matter, but come back here, make a living. Start up a company here in Connecticut, but we can't because of the high regulation, high taxes. And if you vote Democrat this year, again, you're going to get the same policies. The Republicans, on the other hand, take a look at a couple of the Republican states. They're doing really well. States that are governed long time by Republicans do remarkably better than states governed by Democrat policies.
It is incredible to see. Do you have a caller? Do you have a question for Manny Santos? He's running for Congress from the 5th Congressional District.
Marty, first of all, thank you. Manny, I'd vote for you in a heartbeat just based on the few minutes you've been on the show. The question I have, Manny, right, and we all have to be intellectually honest here. How long is it going to take? What are the things that you think you can do and actually implement to make change in Connecticut, right? I've been here 20 years. My kids are one's graduating college, one's a freshman in college. I'm retiring out of Connecticut because I just can't afford to stay here. What are the things that you can do, again, being intellectually honest, to convince my kids to stay? And again, Manny, I'm in your court. I want you to win. I want Connecticut to win. But what do you do? Thanks a lot.
By the way, the number's on your screen, 203-438-2003, if you have a question for Manny Santos, candidate for the 5th Congressional District. So respond to that, and then we want to hear from you too as well.
The caller actually, that's what we're all about. That's exactly why I'm in this race. The first thing that we need to do, and the current administration has already done some work in that, is lowering taxes. We can't continue to have our taxes increases at the federal level, never mind at the state level. We know at the state level it's disastrous. So as a congressman, you can only do so much on your own, because it's a body that votes for legislation that's put forward. But I could certainly support the administration, or I could fight the administration on certain things that I disagree with.
So Manny, what taxes would you cut?
Well, a lot of the taxes have already been reduced. We with the current administration, right?
On the federal level.
At the federal level.
Corporate tax going
Right,
from...
but what the caller was asking about specifically is, in Connecticut, tell us what exactly you would do to create a pro-growth, pro-business environment, and what's the timetable? With specifics, I think, is what he was hoping for.
Yeah, as a federal position, my influence is greater at the federal level. So at the state level, there's only really there isn't a lot that a congressman can do. But at the federal level, we could reduce regulations. That's the primary barrier to job creation is excessive regulation and excessive taxes, because it's not as difficult for current companies that have the resources and the wherewithal to adjust to that. But if you want to create an entrepreneurship environment, high taxes and high regulations just doesn't cut it, because it's too expensive to break in. It's too expensive to break into markets that are dominated by these larger companies that can absorb a lot.
How do you shrink government?
Well,
how do you eliminate the EPA or the Department of Education? How do you take a bite out of it?
Well, the first thing that I'm advocating, and I'm going to push through in Congress, is term limits. Most of the issues that we have in Congress is because elected officials in the Senate and in the House that have been in there for far too long, and the longer you're in there, the more influence you start having, the more power you amass. And consequently, when anyone else wants to run against them, it's very, very expensive. So you get the money out of campaigns, and you get these entrenched politicians out of Washington, D.C., who continue to make wrong decisions year after year, because they're only out to get to be reelected.
Absolutely.
So term limits fixes most of those issues.
How about one-term politicians that get lifetime benefits? Does that make sense? I think I'm right on that, right?
I think in the House, frankly, I haven't researched that because it doesn't matter to me. I'm not going there for the benefits. But I recall reading that the House, once you're in there for 5 years, you're eligible for some sort of pension or retirement.
Yeah, I think if you're voted in the Senate, if you get elected once, you get lifetime health benefits, or a lifetime retirement or benefit package.
That seems pretty excessive to me.
Yeah,
well, let's flip the script on you. You're all of a sudden elected. You're representing the 5th Congressional District in Congress. What would you do? Would you go in guns a-blazing with term limits, for example?
I think term limits probably a good idea.
Yeah.
But the big problem is you've got to cut the size of government.
Yeah.
The federal government has grown to be the 10-ton gorilla that's just sucking all the life out of this country. So anytime I see where Trump initiates giving back state or federal lands back to the state, I think that's a good idea. Where he jumped in this last week and he wanted to get involved in an issue that I thought was unique to California, for example, the clean air standards. I don't think he has any right to jump in there. If California wants to legislate themselves out of business and create a standard that says we need 50 miles per gallon per car by the year 2025, let California do that. I mean, they're an independent state, right? I mean, they should be. Federal government shouldn't be dictating. You can't do that with CAFE standards. So, I think you got to get the federal government off the back of the American people. And I think that, Trump has cut more regulations in his first year and a half in office than any president in history. The trend is our friend here. He's got to keep that up.
Yeah. Bob, what are your thoughts?
Well, I believe in term limits. Absolutely.
Mainly
Because
Democrats.
it's a trough. No, it's a trough.
Yeah.
Getting reelected is the main impetus for politicians. And when I look at special interests and how they game the system, and it doesn't matter if it's Google or it's Texaco or it's any other company, they grease the wheels to the lobbyists. And these guys are bought and paid for. And as an American, it gets me really angry. And it doesn't matter what party. I'd like to see a third party. I'd like to see a party for a guy like me, because I'm conservative, I'm liberal. And every time you say, well, you got to vote Democratic or Republican, well, gee, I would really like to see possibly a third party. Question I'll pose you, what do you think of net neutrality?
Well, the net neutrality is, before that legislation was, or the regulation was passed, the internet worked fine. So I don't see why we needed it to begin with. I think the free market can dictate or can manage that. When you look at utilities, for instance,
Yes.
The only reason we only have one telephone company, or the only reason we only have one cable company, or electric company, and it's because of the monopoly,
Yes,
of sorts that has been set up, and that's what I'm afraid of with net neutrality is coming to that point where the innovation gets drowned out, gets pushed out because
Well,
there's no incentive.
Well, what's
Well,
happening?
you're the technology guru.
Well,
What's your
net neutrality
view?
is absolutely essential, because the net is an open source environment.
But
So I
isn't
don't-
net neutrality like a misnomer because it's
100%.
basically a Trojan horse for the government coming in and controlling everything?
McDonald's came out with a wonderful ad about
Okay.
net neutrality, and they have this situation in Portugal. Interestingly enough, you want to get
Where you're
access
originally
to
from,
you
right?
want to get access to the net. You buy a package. You buy a package for X number of dollars, and you get some. Maybe it's Netflix, maybe New York Times, maybe it's 1990s. It's 1990 stuff. When you have a net neutrality environment, when you pay a package to Comcast, it costs you, let's say, $50 a month, you have unfettered access to that system. You can go anywhere you want, and companies are not allowed to front and speed up data traffic in terms of, like, my site is a small site versus a large site, let's say Google. So what happens here is the danger is the technology will start to become closed source. Because if a company's allowed to do, fast tier access, well, I'm going to make proprietary code that's going to allow that stuff to move really fast. And so what happens is the debabblization of technology, meaning if I can take that New York Times document, I can convert it into a PDF, and I can send it to David.
Right.
Because it's a Catholic document format that's been agreed upon by various researchers and techies that this is allowed to run on the net. And you see this on every aspect of it. This is why this is using 4 or 5 different programs that have generated this. So you see cream rises. So when you allow it to happen,
let's
then
weigh in on a little different viewpoint on net
Yeah, but
neutrality. Okay?
one last thing, David. 3 people decided on net neutrality. This is a
It
utility.
died,
3,
right?
yes.
Yeah.
3 Republicans versus 2 Democrats. 3 people decided on net neutrality in this country. 3 people. 3
you're saying
billion
it's-
people use the
It was
internet.
a pretty close call, you're saying.
It's not only that, it's dictatorial.
Yeah.
It's dictatorial.
I-
No 3
Wait, let me get my head around.
people-
We don't have net neutrality. We don't have the big arm of government coming in to control the World Wide Web.
No,
You're
it's
100% missing the concept of net neutrality.
Well, please.
It's not-
and
tell me
enlighten
about it.
us, oh, Rabbi.
Okay, so here's the thing. If you take the market cap of Facebook, of Google, of Amazon, and Apple,
Okay.
all have gotten filthy rich, are worth trillions of dollars off of someone else's technology, and you're telling me that you're going to limit what someone else can charge for that.
No, that is not it, David.
Bob
it
Moran
is not it.
100%.
It's not it.
Bob,
You ever
I let
have one of those
finish. I let
awkward
you finish.
Thanksgiving
it.
dinners
It's not
where
it.
the family argues
It's not
and you
it.
start looking at your peas on the plate? I'm having kind of that flashback.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
you-
I'm just
you
going to have
guys
another
talk.
drink.
I will too, but go ahead. You
So,
guys,
Bob, I'm going to finish on this because we let you ramble on this. It's 100% the case. Now, what net neutrality did was they forced companies, the main providers, which right now is AT&T and Verizon and T-Mobile Sprint, forced them, limited them what they can charge for speed and access to the internet.
Okay.
They handcuffed them, just like that. You're handcuffed. They're the ones investing tens of billions of dollars in new technology all the time. You know what the rollout of 5G is going to cost? It's going to cost over $100 billion. So now you're forcing these companies that are making this investment, and you're going to tell them what they can charge. It's like a regulated utility. It's preposterous. Bob, I'm going to finish. What this is going to do, by eliminating net neutrality, it's going to drive down the cost to you and I, and it's going to charge more for companies like Amazon, Facebook, Apple, and all these companies that are making hundreds of billions
that's a
of
good
dollars.
thing.
100% necessary. It's a free market. The people that provide the technology should be able to charge what they want.
Right.
See,
Let me just say that
Please.
that
You're the one that's gonna decide
it
this stuff when you're in Congress.
It was the same amount of people that decided on giving us net neutrality. Just,
True, that's true.
Just
Right.
the other way around. The-
So is that dictatorial, Bob? Or?
Right. So in the other point is that the way it's set up right now with net neutrality, a gamer using up all sorts of bandwidth, that data going back and forth is treated exactly the same way as an email going back and forth.
Exactly right.
That's problematic because that gamer or whoever uses a lot of broadband, a lot of data, are using most of the data and paying the same amount as someone else who doesn't need all that data, and yet they're still paying the same amount. So there's got to be a better way. That way is not the best way.
Here's a price point comparison. If you're in Singapore, you pay $25 a month, and you're dealing with bandwidth that's almost 10 times faster in the U.S.
Get
Now
the
you
hell out of
want
here.
you want to find out if
That's 'cause
Verizon.
they don't have net neutrality.
Oh, please, David.
Well, it's true.
The Verizon makes a lot of money. All these guys make a lot of money. It's in their best interest to develop 5G, because if they develop 5G, they're going to make more money. When you pay, like Altice has a monopoly.
Who
In
does?
Reading, Altice is Cablevision.
Oh, okay,
They have a
okay.
monopoly,
Uh-huh.
and you pay a righteous amount
They
of money.
carried the Marty Heiser show?
Yeah.
I'm
No,
in
no,
favor
no,
of it.
no, no. They're,
Oh, they don't? No.
Yeah, they
Then
do.
Screw them.
well, tangentially they do.
Okay.
Tangentially they do. But they make a righteous amount of money. And we
Right.
pay a lot of money to get access to the net.
Right.
And
But you'll pay
because of-
less by eliminating net neutrality.
the thing is if you allow a company to control the lanes in terms of speeds, you will start to
Bob,
erode the open source
Anybody
connect
can
that
put
makes the internet.
satellites in the sky and transmit on the internet.
All right, I want to
Free
spin
market
off of
dictates.
this.
Right.
I want to, because right now, I'm going to give you a magic wand. You are now elected to the 5th Congressional District. You've had a 12-year run. You've been reelected. 12 years, reelected 6 times. That's pretty good because you came in on, you don't want to have that. So what are 3 things that you would like to, in the future, look back and say, this is what I helped, this is what I moved the country towards? What are 3 things that are really your heart and soul that drive you to go out to these chicken dinners, to go to those meetings? And I watch some of your meetings. They can get a little contentious.
City council meetings?
Council meetings. I saw it all. I
That's
YouTube all this stuff.
great
That's how I heard
entertainment
the
there.
cut off the ham story, which you totally destroyed. But anyways, what would you look back on your career and what are you hoping to accomplish in your heart of hearts? What is driving you?
Well, I have to first say that I have some understanding of what this country will look like if we continue down the path that we've been going the last several years, and that is what Portugal went through, or what so many other countries have gone through, and that's a heavy government, either authoritarian or a socialist government. Once you let government grow at a certain rate, it's very difficult to slow it down. It's very difficult to reverse it. The number one threat to our liberties and our freedoms is growth in government, because that stamps out any other private sector in innovation or activity. But every time legislation is passed, every time a law is passed, chances are you're losing a little bit of your freedom, a little bit of your liberties. And I used to say that the least that Congress does, the better.
Government that governs least, governs best.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I think in the last, and I believe this, in the last 20 years, government has been going in the wrong direction for such a long time that we need to undo a lot of that. And in order to undo a lot of that, we need to pass legislation that nulls and voids a lot of previous laws.
So that's your big thing.
So in general, because I don't know how much time I'm giving, but
I gave you 12 years.
Yeah. So well, that's how long it may end up taking. But so reducing the size and scope of government, one bite at a time.
That's exactly right, my friend.
So reducing the size and scope of government
Okay.
is my focus.
Then give me the other two.
Well, I mean, that's.
I mean, after you do that, look at Trump. He solved global warming the first year. The Koreans are spooning together over there on the Korean Peninsula.
Look,
and the economy, there's a visual for you.
Yeah.
And the economy is going through the roof. Exports are up, the deficit's down, and he did it in 12 months. You seem to be like a free enterprise Republican kind of guy. So you can limit the role of government the first year. Give me two more things you're going to do.
Well, in limiting the role of government, it accomplishes so many other things. But for instance, hot topics right now is illegal immigration. By the way, with illegal immigration, the Democrats are using it as a wedge issue. This could have been solved years ago, but they don't want a solution to it.
Yeah.
And the only solution that they do want is theirs. And so undocumented come in this country illegally, and we have no process to handle that other than deportation or the executive orders that are in place that just delays deportation. That's all it does.
The dreamers and DACA.
Yeah, and I've stated publicly, and it's in my handouts and everything, I'm not opposed to finding and establishing a path to legalization for the DACA and some dreamers, but predominantly the DACA individuals, giving them a clear path to legalization. I am completely against giving them a path for citizenship. We should not reward coming across the border illegally, even if it was their parents who brought them here. It's still an illegal condition, an illegal movement. If we reward illegal activity with a citizenship, all it does is it gives the message that it's okay to do this in the future, and it should not be.
Did your parents arrive here illegally, or did they go through the proper channels?
We went through the proper channels. Yeah, we waited and we.
So you're not anti-immigrant because you're an immigrant yourself.
No. In
God
fact,
bless.
I know.
My mother grew up in Germany. Don't ask.
I know people who are here illegally, and they're hard workers. They have jobs. Many of them even pay taxes. The problem is they're living in fear.
Yeah.
Because there's no process. There's no legalization process for them, and that could be easily done. So
Okay, we're in the lightning round. Give us 5 things we need to know. Lightning round.
So Hillary came up with another reason why she lost the election.
I believe it's because husbands told their wives what to do.
First of all,
and if you believe that, I've got a butterfly that just flew
another
off
one
my
to add
rear
to
end.
it is because she was a capitalist, and most Democrats are socialists.
That was
so
it.
she was too capitalist.
Yeah, I
so
saw that.
you got that one going for you. And then there was the guy in Brooklyn. And I don't mean to make light of this, but it's just kind of ironic. But this guy in New York City, Brooklyn's Prospect Park, he soaks himself in gas, commits suicide, dies in a fire to raise awareness for global warming. Not a good situation. So feel bad about that one. And at some point over the next 2 months, you're going to have to come on this show, do a mea culpa, and say, you know what, you're right, Dave. We have no business bombing Syria for supposed alleged chemical attacks that are being blamed on the government, because frankly, there is no proof, never was any proof. We've done it 4 times now, and they're all false flags.
Yeah.
So that's preposterous.
It's about the money.
Bob, lightning round.
It's all about the money. And David's right about Syria. It's all about the money. And technology, it's a very interesting construct about this. Very interesting.
Are you glad you're live
fake
to
news.
see all this?
Fake
To see all
news.
this?
It's fake news. The aspect of fake news. How do you analyze that? What's the truth? We're getting to the point now we don't know
That's
what
why
the
people
truth
tune
is.
into the show here.
We don't
Marty
even,
Heiser show.
we don't even,
Because we got
we don't
therapy
even know what the
dogs.
truth is anymore.
No,
I like
we
your
do.
take.
We got the
I like your
therapy
take on
dog with
immigration. It
us.
makes perfect sense. Immigration can be straightened out. Why isn't there an amnesty program with the proper protocols in terms of people being in here? This is logical.
Some people say a chicken in
Yeah.
every pot. I say a therapy dog on every couch.
That's right.
And a lot of good things. I'm going to give you the final word. Will you look into that camera and tell people how they can get in touch with you, how they can help your campaign, and what you're going to do for them in the 5th Congressional District? You got a minute. Go.
Absolutely. If you want to find out more about me, you can go to santosforcongress.com. You're able to also contribute there. As you know, campaigns are not cheap. With the amount of money that goes around, that is one of the primary reasons why your everyday person cannot run for higher office. It is money. And so please contribute. And also, we need volunteers. We can't do this alone. We need people to go out there, knock on doors, spread the word. It takes a lot of work, and I have some experience on how to handle the opposition, and they are relentless. They are ruthless. You need someone in Congress who can do the same thing.
All right. Well, listen, thank you so much for coming in. I really appreciate it.
Thank
Bob,
you.
thank you so
Appreciate
much.
it. Thank you.
It was erudite and very inspirational.
Thanks for including me.
Hey, I'm glad you're here. It wouldn't be the same without you
Hey,
on,
good to meet you.
on the Syrian thing.
Very good.
And please join us next week when, let's see what we got next week. All I know is that our director, Mike, may not be here next week, which means that we're going to have to carry the ball for him otherwise. But I want to thank my guests. I want to thank those students, too, because it's been interesting to see. I just like to see them coming out and taking a stand on issues. It happened to be the Florida school shooting, where they spontaneously came out and took a stand. When they did that, it was interesting to see it wasn't one monolithic group that went out that said, take away the guns, confiscate the guns, that's the problem. But there were actually people like this young man. Hold on, got to get my glasses. We got a second. Sophomore Adrian Martinez, who went out and was willing to buck the trend, be conservative, rock and roll, be a liberal, and vote Republican this time around. What do you have to lose, as our beloved president says? Good night, and we'll see you next week on the Marty Heiser Show. And thank you to Roar and that beautiful dog, Rafi. Thanks for coming in, and we'll see you next week. Good night.
Simon.